You're now a counselor to a Fortune 500 company. What do they do to increase trust? Or are they getting what they deserve at the moment?
I think trust has to be earned. And the classic example of how trust can be earned is the Tylenol story. Right? Every time you have something that goes wrong in the company, you just have to be completely open and unashamed to admit to your mistakes and tell the public how you plan to address and how you plan to redress the mistake. So I think just complete transparency in everything that's going on in the company is key.
Please jump in, everybody.
Oh, I wish the return of personal shame would start. Because that's a great measurement to create trust. If you look at your personal relationships, if you want people to trust you, there need to be something risky on your side. And if people don't trust each other, then there's nothing at stake. So who cares? And we cannot make the legal system take care of that. That's a lot of money wasted on people who already ruined our trust. I mean, look, Mr. Madoff, how much he costs right now. On top of what he costs. And so if I would give an advice to the leadership of large companies, I say clean up your own act first, because that's a lot of trust you can invoke in the rest of the company. And the way you act, the way you treat your own personal environment, it's a big thing. And there are other cultures out there where trust is more important than wealth and success, because that's a building block. Even if you're not successful at the moment, the personal reputation is a building block. Just a quick story that I'd like to iterate. There's a great restaurant here in DC, Kincaid's, down here. And I have a friend who's a chef, and he takes me there, and I have to pay, which is really bad because it's way beyond my budget. But the owner of that restaurant, he failed on his second restaurant up north, and he spoke about it recently. And one of the things he did, he bankruptcy, all the money was gone, and over 3 years he came back from a star-owned restaurant owner, and he started as a chef out. He made his living as a chef, but over 3 years he paid back all the money he owed to all of the creditors he had, which he didn't have to legally, and so. And he felt this is my way of creating trust. When he wanted to open the new restaurant, he had more money at his disposal to get this started, because all of the people, and then the people they talked about it, and friends of friends, wanted to invest in him. That's how important trust can be in the long run.
Yeah, so I just want to back up what Ritu was saying about transparency being kind of the critical component, particularly for large firms. I think that's why small firms are often trusted more than large firms, because large firms, just by virtue of their size, are just much less transparent. But what has to happen within the large organization is that it has to be a cultural norm. So it has to be something that's coming from within the firm, and it can't just be this sort of top-down leadership. Of course, that's very important. But you also have to institute, for example, that some level of individual failure is okay to talk about, right? Because otherwise, it's very much human nature for people to try to diminish or hide their personal failings. And so, to the extent that lots of decisions on revealing information are coming from middle managers as well as the top of the company, that has to be something that is indoctrinated through the firm, that there is this goal of transparency and developing trust.
Yeah, maybe it should be part of the PVP that Rosabeth talked about, right? Make transparency and trust part of that.
Mm-hmm. In my company, we had an annual prize for the most important failure. And so that had two effects. First of all, it was fun. Everybody got the winner got a golden banana. That was a prize, and a check. And a check of $500. Nice. The reason why we had this is we wanted to encourage people to try something new. And the motto of that prize was, when was the last time you did something for the first time? Think about this yourself. When was the last time you did something for the first time? And so that was the motto there. And this was part of our trust. We said, you do something, don't waste the company on it, but you do something that is interesting and new. If it fails, that's not a problem, but at least you have to report on that. If it really, catastrophically, interestingly fails, you get a prize. So.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add my favorite motto is always make new mistakes, which is kind of along the lines of the golden banana. Please.
I was invited to comment on that as well, even though I'm in the moderator's chair. But I wanted to comment on the title of our conference, which is Leadership for a Better World. And I think ultimately what you're talking about is a challenge for business schools to think seriously about what leadership is. When I started Fast Company, one of my favorite hobby horses was we took great issue with the traditional definition of leadership. I joked about it. If you picked up Fortune, Forbes, or Business Week, every issue had on the cover a photograph of a white man facing right, because that's a symbol of leadership. And the caption on the cover was always, the toughest SOB to do XYZ. And so Fortune in those days even had an annual issue devoted to the 10 toughest bosses in America. And to be a tough leader, you had to locate your leadership style, I said it in Fast Company, at the corner of kick ass and take names, as if that makes you a good leader. And we all know that's, number one, it was bogus then, but in a world of Blackberries and disaggregated organizations, it's a model that is completely bankrupt. And the organizations that find themselves in trouble, I think, hew to that model, that the person at the top always has to be the smartest, usually guy in the room, and is expected to have all the answers, and is expected to have a chiseled chin and a forceful manner. And the model of leadership that we wrote about in Fast Company, we talked about grassroots leadership. The team with the most leaders at all levels wins. And that leadership often consists of asking the best questions, not knowing the right answers. So I really think one of the challenges for business schools is to produce leaders who are different than the type that are running large Fortune 500 companies today. Not that they're all indictable, although over the past 40 years, many of them have been indicted, as it turns out. I did a recent study of scandal, and it turns out that if you Google the word business scandal in America, over the last 40 years, every decade, like a train arriving on time, we've had a business scandal meltdown. And I said to a talk to the SIU Business School that if you had a friend who every 10 years or more often ended up driving his car into a ditch and leaving it there because he was drunk, you would stage an intervention and bring that person to a 12-step program immediately. And I think that's what business schools ought to be doing. They ought to be staging interventions on behalf of a different model of leadership that will keep us from driving the car into the ditch one more time with people who are worshiping at the wrong altars, practicing the wrong kinds of decision-making, keeping score in ways that don't make sense, paying attention to things that really are not sustainable. But until we reinvent leadership, we won't get a better world. That's my 2 cents.